Welcome back to the Brews and Business Podcast. Of course, you know me as your host, Braedon Cruz. This is going to be episode in the hundreds at this point. So, episode 100 just published recently. So if you haven't seen episode 100, it's really cool. It's really, Abel and I spitfired a bunch of stuff and looked back over some things that we learned and probably some more things that we still need to learn. A lot of great conversations. And as usual, we always have something to drink. So today I'll introduce a whiskey here in a minute. And don't forget to go get your fresh coffee from Gregor & Coffee and use code BREWS for 10% off at gregorandcoffee.com, the official coffee sponsor of the podcast. Today's special guest is Sean Lord from Heroes Hope. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
It's you traveled quite the distance.
A little bit, yeah. About 100 feet from the office.
Yeah, down the hall. Yeah, you could probably like crawl or tumble down the hall. Yeah. So today we got a good whiskey from the team.
Yeah.
From Sean Goen. So cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome. So a little bit on your background. You come from the U.S. Marine Corps, and you're currently a pastor.
Yes.
Right? And now you're also operating Heroes Hope and the executive director of that and Soldier's Wish.
Yep.
So,
I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah. Welcome to the club. Yeah, we're all there.
Yeah.
So kind of give me a little bit of your background, kind of starting with like the Marine Corps. And I think we're probably thinking like college time?
Yeah.
College
so I graduated high school and I went to college for a year. I hated it. And like every day I'd wake up and I just dreaded going to school. And about the time my second semester ended, I had one of my high school best friends came back from Marine Corps recruit training. And he said, "Hey man, why don't you try this Marine thing?" So I walked into the recruiter's office. A couple months later, I was in boot camp and just kind of went down from there. But in my time in the Marine Corps, I got some training on suicide prevention and addiction coaching. I got some training and experience on physical fitness. You know, all Marines are physically fit, but somebody gets injured or, you know, they get to a point where they couldn't be unit deployment ready for a little while. Like they got to get back there. So I spent some time doing those things too. And then I found myself on recruiting duty, which was probably one of the worst jobs I've ever done, but I loved it because I like talking to people. But what I learned there is the power of really understanding somebody's why, what drives them. And when you can find a way to meet their true needs, then people can be unstoppable. But towards the end of my recruiting duty time, I had my fourth traumatic brain injury at that point, and it just didn't make sense to stay in the military anymore. So in conversations with my wife, we decided, hey, we're going to move on. I wanted to jump headfirst into pastoral ministry. And so that's what I had been doing up until May of 2025, full-time pastoral ministry. And at that point, you know, Heroes Hope had grown so much. I was fighting that tension of, man, I love being full-time ministry in the church and full-time ministry outside the church, but I can't do both and care for people well. So I decided to jump into Heroes Hope full-time. That's what I've been doing for the last year.
What's your favorite part about it?
I love the look on a veteran's face when they walk through the door of one of our homes for the first time. I could tell you over 100 stories of times that I've picked veterans up and I've taken them to one of our transitional homes, open the door, I show them around, I open the cabinet, show them all the food, I show them their bed. And when it clicks for them that all of that is there for them, they don't have to pay anything to be there. It's just a group of people cared enough to make that happen for them. Almost every single time brings tears. It brings speechlessness to the individual. And that's my favorite moment of what we do.
Aren't they shocked? Aren't they like, this isn't mine? Like, I'm not really here. I don't
100%.
Right? Like,
yeah.
but it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's
like you guys give them what? Bed, utensils, dishes, food, groceries,
it's
milk in the fridge. Like, and they're coming from the streets.
Yeah. So every veteran we work with is coming from an unhoused situation. We have a few that come to us from, they got evicted from their home after a divorce, or some get released to us from being in jail or something like that. But the vast majority of the men and women we serve are living in their car or living on the street. And when you really peel back all of the struggles with homelessness, it's not just one thing, and to get from being under a bridge or living in your car back to being what everybody else would consider self-sustainable, it's not just one or two steps. It's more than employment. It's more than sustained income. And it's overwhelming. And so when we pick these men and women up and we take them to our housing options, we open that door, we show them that there's a house full of food. They've got running water. They've got access to shampoo and a toothbrush, blankets. They've got a door that locks now, and they can sleep with the comfort of knowing nobody's going to be stealing anything from them.
Or killing them.
It's surreal. And they don't believe it at first. And almost every time I move somebody in, I have to stay with them for an hour or two just to reassure them, like, no, this is real.
Don't leave.
Yeah. Please don't leave.
Yeah, please don't leave. I got you here. Yeah.
And our programs are 100% free to them. And I think that's hard too, because, you get to a point as a person where you start to realize nothing's really free. There's always an expectation of something when somebody says free. But our program really, the only expectation we have for them is that they're going to let us work alongside them to get them back on their feet. So I say everybody's in the honeymoon phase for the first week or two, because the first 2 weeks they're with us. They shower multiple times a day. They wash their clothes multiple times a week, and they eat like they haven't had food security for years, because for most of them, that is the reality, But after about 2 or 3 weeks, it really settles in, the blessing that they've received, and their motivation for getting back on their feet starts to kick in. And I love talking about our program. I could talk about it for weeks. It's unique because there are not free options for unhoused veterans anywhere else. There's a lot of veterans that will panhandle to pay for a hotel room for a night. There's some that will move in with family and friends for a little bit. But as soon as you move in with family and friends, or you buy yourself a hotel room for a night, you lose your unhoused status with the federal government. In order to regain it, you have to physically go back out into the street for at least 24 hours. And so it becomes just a scary thought of, it's safer in a hotel, so I'd rather grind and pay for a hotel, even if that's panhandling, because I don't want to go live on the street again. So our program, everything we do, offers free resources, free housing to those veterans, and they maintain their homeless status because they're not paying to be there. So now we're able to offer a safe space, like we were just talking about, and really lead them somewhere, knowing that they have an address, they have access to the things they need, and we can truly help them get to where they want to go.
Yeah, it's a very unique program. And I think a lot of people, including myself, wonder, how did you get to where you are now? Why? And why are you still here? It's your fault because you're still not doing anything to try to get out of it. Right. And I think that people's perceptions also include, if you really wanted out of it, you would go to a shelter, or you would go grab food, or whatever it is. So like, that common perception, where's the gaps?
Yeah. So I used to be the type of person that felt like everybody that was on the street was there because they wanted to be there.
Because they're lazy.
Yeah. I was that kind of person that said, well, if they really are a veteran, most businesses have veteran preference for employment. So just go get a job. And it took me probably 4 or 5 years in ministry to realize that that's not the case. And even if one of these veterans that we work with walked in and filled out an application at a place, if they've been living on the street, not showering, not shaving, they don't have access to reliable transportation, they're not getting hired anyways, even if they are a veteran and they hold that preference, right? So it really made me start asking questions of, what can we do, and how do we, one, serve the people that are there, but help people from getting there? And I had a friend probably 6 or 7 years ago. He challenged me on a phone call one day. We're just talking about problems in ministry. And he said, hold on a second. How many panhandlers did you drive by on your way to the office today? So I thought about it. There was at least 5 or 6. And the church I was working at the time, there was one right on the corner when I got off the highway before I turned into the church. And he said, okay, you were at the red light. That person was right there, right? Yeah. Did you talk to him? Did you roll your window down? I said, nope. He said, what'd you do? I said, I pretended like I was on a phone call. I did everything I could to avoid that individual because I didn't feel like I had something I could do for them in that moment. And he challenged me again. He said, you're just justifying your feelings. He said, how many people drive by that guy every day, every hour, and pretend like he doesn't exist? He said, that already creates a feeling of worthlessness that people can't dig out of on their own sometimes. As a man who's battled depression before, like, I know what it's like to feel hopeless and feel like I've got nobody in my corner when my wife and my kids are right there on the couch next to me. And so if it's hard for me to dig myself out at that point, how much harder is it for these guys? So My role in the church at that time was community pastor. So a lot of what I would do is spend my time out in the city learning about nonprofits, where the church can be involved, how the church can serve the community. When people in the church are in need of something, where can we point them? And I found myself in a lot of conversations with veterans that were panhandling or they were living under a bridge, and I was just extroverted enough to step into the conversation. And in the first 5 or 6 months of these conversations, I learned that most of them knew about the shelters, they knew about the food pantries, they knew about the places they could go, and they either were choosing not to or they were told not to come back. And as I continued conversations, I continued research, what I started to learn was most of these men and women had mental wounds that had been uncared for, post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, maybe a combat-related physical injury. And those things had gone untreated for so long that then it turned into self-medicating through alcohol, drugs, beer, wine, whiskey, any form of alcohol can be one of the cheapest medicines to help somebody fall asleep and sleep through the night. And that's not just something I say because I think it's true. One of the first veterans I ever served, I say his name is Bob. He doesn't let me share his real name. I met him. He was living under a bridge in Tulsa. And he was less than half a mile away from John 3:16, the day center, and some of these other shelters. And he'd been living under that bridge for over 5 years. And so when I asked him why he was not willing to go to these other resources, he started sharing that he had been kicked out of all of them. And as he shared his long-term story, what I learned was when he got back from Vietnam, he was battling post-traumatic stress and didn't have a name for it yet. He didn't know what it was. And there were nights where he had such violent dreams and terrors that he hurt people in his family who were trying to wake him up, trying to care for him. So at one point he said, I'm not safe for my family. So he moved in with another veteran buddy of his. And the veteran buddy basically explained that he realized the best way for him to sleep through the night, not have nightmares, is to drink himself to sleep. And so Bob did that. He told his family he was cured. He moved back in with his family. Well, 3, 4, 5 years later, he's having to drink all day long just to be able to fight back the memories and the violence and those things. And so the Bob that I'm seeing under the bridge was choosing self-isolation and self-medication because that was the safest version of himself that he knew. And he couldn't go to shelters, didn't want to go to shelters. He would not move back home because he felt like he was a danger to the people around him. And so what I realized in that moment is, this is somebody that I understand that isn't struggling with some of the same things that maybe others think he's struggling with. Like there's unmet needs here and he just needs some people in his corner. So I went back to my wife and I said, we got to do something about this. She said, well, you're in the church. The church probably already has resources. So we spent a year and a half maybe trying to figure out how the church can be the one to solve that problem. And we just kept kind of running into closed doors, running into people saying, hey, it's not possible. We've tried. There's really no way to get through this hurdle and this hurdle. And so eventually on a drive home from a Christmas trip, my wife and I had a conversation and we just said, maybe we need to be the ones to start the thing. We clearly understand the veteran community that they're going through. Everybody else that's in that world has run into hurdles and road bumps. Like maybe we are the ones that need to figure that out. So that's how Heroes Hope came to be. We got a small group of veterans together from the church and we said, we want to solve this problem. As veterans, we understand the veteran community probably better than anybody else. And so we're going to find a way to make things happen.
How does your wife support you in this? Because I've heard stories of you just needing to be gone at any point in time. Like midnight, 6 a.m., 4 p.m. It almost doesn't matter. Like I've heard stories of you just needing to go.
So my wife was Marine too. She was trained in the Marine world knowing that sometimes you get calls and you've got to go somewhere. She lived that life. And when I stepped into ministry, like we had plenty of conversations of ministry is never just a solo activity. Family is always involved. And so we've always had the conversations of when the needs come up, we're going to be available for them unless we can't be. And so any of the times that I've gotten calls or texts at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's a crisis call, I've always had her support of, hey, go be there for that person right now. We'll still be home when you get back. And she was actually the co-founder of Heroes Hope with me. We started going to other veterans we knew in the church and saying, hey, we want to do this thing. Will you come with us? We need a board. We can't do it by ourselves, but we're going to start somewhere. And so she has always been the co-founder and vice president of Heroes Hope since day one.
It's cool.
Yeah. She's awesome.
Yeah, she's 100% on board. You gotta have the family involved in or considered in anything that you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's been huge having her on the team too, because we do meet needs for female veterans. And sometimes it's easier for a female veteran to step into a conversation with a female veteran. And so she's also made some of those phone calls, sent text, been the one to stand in the gap for those ladies too. So she's been very involved.
You have this thing called like a no red tape approach.
My favorite part. So when we started the organization, I started throwing around the term of no red tape because all the veterans we'd been talking to, they were already facing all these hurdles. They couldn't go into the shelters because of the things they were struggling with. When it came to long-term housing, the VA has great programs in partnership with Housing and Urban Development for long-term supportive housing. But veterans were getting denied on apartment applications because of substance abuse, mental health, and jail time. And so there was already so many barriers. We said we need to find a way to remove all of those barriers, because when somebody is hungry, unhoused, unsafe, and they don't know where their hygiene and next meals are going to come from, there's nothing you can do to lead them somewhere until those basic needs are met. So we started toying around with the idea, what if we could create a place that, as long as you were a veteran and you were willing to let us work with you, nothing else was expected of you on day one. You could come just as you are with your struggles, whatever your addiction issue is, whatever led to where you're at now. And from there, we would take on the brotherhood responsibility of saying, hey, we're going to help you work through that. So since day one, it's always been a no red tape approach. It doesn't matter what the veteran is struggling with, as long as I can verify they are in fact a veteran and they say, yes, I'd love to work with you, our team's going to stand behind them until they're back on their feet.
Running an organization, whether it's a nonprofit, an LLC, corporation, there's some similarities, right? Or being a coach on a team, you have people, you have process, HR stuff, you have finance, budgeting, inventory. How do you navigate all that?
When I was a young Marine, probably an E2, E3, I had a leader of mine who said, hey, your job is not to be Lance Corporal Lord. Your job is to know the job of the people to your left and your right, to the people that you lead, to the people that lead you. Because the reality is, in a combat or any life situation, any of those people could be taken out at any moment. And you are going to best serve the unit if you can be flexible at all times. The Marine Corps make the joke, Semper Gumby, always flexible, right?
What is that again?
Semper Gumby. So Semper Fidelis is the Marine Corps motto. It's Latin for always faithful. And so we just kind of took that, adapted it to always flexible, always adaptable.
The Marine guys listening, they know right off the bat
100%.
exactly what you said.
Yes.
But for those who don't,
yes.
What did you say? That's why I had you repeat it.
I've adopted that mindset in every form of leadership. One of my least favorite phrases to hear from somebody is, that's not my job. I get the heart behind it.
Oh my God, I heard that. It's not my job duty. It's not my job description.
And I get that. Like, we have to have boundaries and we can't do everybody's job for them all the time. But as a leader, I have to be flexible enough to stand in the gap, because when I first started Heroes Hope, we had no paid staff. I couldn't just say, hey, this person needs to call that veteran, or that person was me. But when it also came to the financials, like, the person that needed to learn QuickBooks and figure out how to do things well was also me. And if I waited until I had the financial security to be able to hire somebody to do that, then we would be at a point now where we'd only maybe helped 5 or 6 veterans instead of the over 130 that we have. And so the ability to stay flexible and to try to avoid the language of, that's not my job, or somebody else will be better at that than me, and change that to, I'm here and I'm going to figure out a way to make it work.
In a leadership position, you have to.
Yes. 100%.
You don't have a choice. As founder, leader, executive. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's going to be times too where somebody on your team is sick. You got to let somebody on your team go. And the job, the mission doesn't just stop because that person's not in that role anymore.
You know what I've learned is that a lot of times a person in a leadership position will be so happy that they don't have to do that role anymore. They have passed it off, and they have passed it off for so long that when that person no longer exists in that role, or maybe that person has actually evolved into managing multiple roles, the leader is lost, is clueless, because they've completely disengaged. And while that may be true as the organization grows and shifts, right? Like, you can't always be involved in those roles to the degree that you hired for, because otherwise, why would you hire it?
Yeah.
Right. So you have to step out, but it's also important to maintain communications, and
Sure.
also understand, what are you doing day to day, and not in a hovering aspect either, maybe on a weekly meeting or whatever that looks like too, and making sure that processes are being followed or whatever. Like, hey, if you bounce, you die, something happens, like I've got to keep going,
Yep.
So I found out too, like a lot of times leaders just, when someone leaves, they're like, what do I do?
Yep.
Holy shit. What, who, what, they're
Yep.
lost.
There's a really good book that I have every up and coming leader that says, hey, Sean, what should I read? It's called Turn the Ship Around. And the book is about a former naval officer who was trained for one type of ship and then was thrown into a completely different type he'd never trained for. And it was failing all of its inspections. And he was tasked with turn the ship around, right? Make this ship functional. And in the book, he talks about how all these people would come to him as the leader with questions. One of the stories he talks about is their radar tech coming to him and saying, hey, sir, what do you want to do here? And he pushed it back on them. He said, you're the radar tech. You know this machine. You've been training this machine. What do you want to do? What do you think is the best move? Then when that individual would share it back, his next statement would be, great, do that. And he would be there more for coaching people through difficult situations and answering questions that have no answer than he was there to say, this is how you do your job and here's how you succeed at it. And that book helped me as a leader to realize my real role is developing the people around me when I have them around me. Sometimes I'm going to be the only guy that can do it, but basically be developing the people under my leadership to a point where I'm not needed. Where if I didn't come into work one day because family emergency, the ship still floats and everybody doesn't feel the tension of, oh, the boss is gone, right? So I love that book. It's encouraged me so much.
There was a point where you guys were housing 30 veterans a couple years ago, and now halfway through this year, housing 70. So a little over double so far. Okay, two-part question. From then to now, what changed? And how long do they stay housed? Right? So is it the same 30 people and now you're stacking them 2 years later? Or does that happen? Or
so to answer that question, I got to go back a little bit. Before we started transitional housing, we had the idea, we knew what we wanted to do. And every conversation I was having was trying to sell somebody an idea that we hadn't figured out yet. And I started sitting down with property owners that had rental homes. And my idea was, we need to find a way that we can rent a house and you don't care who we put there because we're going to care for them. We're on the lease. We take care of those things, but I need your trust. We had tried tiny homes. They were just way too expensive. One tiny home could really only serve one person. The thought with a 4 or 5 bedroom house is we could put 4 or 5 veterans in this house. And we finally found an owner that said, hey, I don't know why, but I feel good about this and I'm going to trust you guys. So we signed a lease. And that was our first transitional home. Within a week of signing the lease, we had churches donate furniture, food. We had 4 veterans living in the house.
Within a week?
Within a week.
Wow.
And all 4 of those veterans came to us from an unhoused situation. And it was kind of crazy because we developed some rules. We had come up with some thoughts of what we think is going to be important. And we learned a lot in that first 6 months because we weren't at the house every day. So we started developing a leadership structure inside the house, rules inside the house, with the goal of, hey, when we're not here, we want to make sure these guys are still cared for. The first 4 guys moved in. 3 of them got into their own apartments within 90 to 120 days. Because now that they had an address and they had a parking space, they had Wi-Fi, we could connect them with other resources. We started connecting them with their VA housing team, Oklahoma Vets United, and some others that could help them. And we were able to start sharing stories. And then the donor base increased. Churches that wanted to support increased because they saw that now it's not an idea, we're actually doing it. And we started getting more calls for people that needed beds than we had space for. And we're like, well, we're going to have to wait until veteran A moves out of his room. And then we got to pick from this list of 10 people that want to go in of who's best going to be served here. One of our board members said, well, hey, nobody else is saying yes to rental homes. So what if we just put 2 beds in each room? And we doubled up. We did it in the barracks when we were junior Marines. Everybody's used to it. Let's do it. So we were able to move 3 more people into that house and already double our impact simply because somebody had the idea of, well, hey, let's just change our program a little bit, right? Now we had 8 veterans in this house. Stories started to pick up again, and we had 2 homeowners that saw stories on the news and called us and said, hey, I'm getting ready to put my house on the market. Do you guys want to rent it? And so one house that was able to double the number of veterans in the first year now turned into 3 homes at the beginning of 2026. And we were able to do the same thing, double up on rooms. And so our impact went from the 8 in that house to the 24 that we have in the 3 houses now that are actively being cared for by our team and the teams around. At the same time, we have some females that are in apartments. We didn't want to put females in a house with a bunch of guys just for safety concerns. And so we've had about 9 females in the last year that we have put into hotels or extended stay apartment complexes until their housing kicks in. So that's where we crossed the 30 line. That number has grown because every time we move a veteran out, we turn that bed around within hours. Usually we just throw the stuff in the wash. And if we don't have somebody on a wait list, we start calling the VA or some of the services around, and we identify veterans that could move in there. So we
have somebody on the wait list. Are they still in the street?
Usually, yes. If we can get them if we have the funding to get them into a hotel, we will.
Otherwise, you just go track them down.
Otherwise, we just got to go track them down. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's hard some days. It's nice where we're at now because we partner with the VA, OK Vets United, Children and Family Services. So there's usually 4 or 5 of us trying to find the one person instead of me just running around like it was 3 or 4 years ago, You
just go on back trails, Riverside, and 71st and Mingo. And
one of the veterans that recently got his own apartment, he was with us for about 7 months. I found where he was staying in the woods on a hunting trip. I was out tracking down a deer that I had shot, and I see this tent out of the corner of my eye, and we are an hour and a half outside of Tulsa. The nearest city is probably 30 minutes away. And this guy had found this tent, and he'd been living out there for years because, veteran community, we've been trained to survive. We've been trained to be self-sufficient. So it's just him and his dog in this tent for 5 years. And so sometimes it's the random moments like that. Other times it's just driving around town. You see the panhandler wearing camouflage pants or a Vietnam veteran hat or something. It's easier to tell with those.
It's kind of moving on to partnerships.
Yeah.
And like what's next. So just recently, as of this year, you're helping to lead the Soldier's Wish team.
Yep.
And that's had some really good shifts for veterans as well and their families. Tell me a little bit about that partnership and what that looks like.
Yeah. So the years that I spent in the church world as a pastor focused on community involvement and things like that, I learned that nonprofits typically fall into one of 2 categories. I call them relief and restoration, right? Think about that old saying, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. A lot of nonprofits do relief, the feeding or caring for somebody right now really well. That's your food banks. That is your entities that can repair a car one time, something like that, right? But relief entities are not funded or set up to care long-term. And so usually that's when you're turning to a restorative entity, somebody who can't meet immediate needs, but once immediate needs are met, they're there to stand alongside somebody long-term. So Heroes Hope has been a restorative entity since day one. We're focused on the long-term housing, long-term care, right? We've never been able to provide cars when our veterans need them because finances don't support it. It's difficult for us to meet some of those urgent one-time needs because all of our funding is going to creating bed spaces. Soldier's Wish is more on the relief side. Like that team has always existed to meet the one-time needs of veterans, service members, and families. And there have been times where we've worked together. They had a veteran reach out that needed housing assistance. We have 4 veterans that we've served in the last year that needed vehicles. And so we've had a great working partnership anyways. And so when the board reached out to me about potentially stepping in to lead the team, I threw out the idea of what if we just kind of soft merge the 2 together? They're obviously still separate entities because Soldier's Wish has been around for 13 years. Heroes Hope's been around for 4. The bylaws and how we operate are kind of different, but we complement and support each other really well. And if we did it right, every time either team met a veteran, if they could be better served by both teams working together, we're all in the same office already. So we decided back in mid-February of this year, like, we're going to make that happen. So what that partnership has looked like is just bringing 2 really strong veteran caring teams together into the same office to pool resources, to say, hey, we're working with this veteran on this side of the team. How can maybe the other side of the team support them too? What can we do to provide better care faster? And that's the long-term vision, is just caring for more veterans faster in all avenues that we might be able to help with.
So cool. So what's next for Heroes Hope?
We've got 2 properties in Tulsa that we're working on right now. One is a veteran-specific shelter, and one is an apartment complex.
Complex?
Yeah. And I'll explain those in a second. After this, my goal is
that's a big deal.
Yes, we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
I'm just long-term goals.
Yeah.
We want to replicate this in other cities because we know that what we do is unique. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And we know how to do it. We know the steps we need to take. We know how to do it so that veterans can maintain their homeless status. We don't have to be the ones to launch into another city and do it ourselves, but we can empower veterans there to take the processes and things we've learned and grow with it. So that's the long-term vision.
Another chapter.
Yes. Chapters basically that are fully self-sufficient, but they're still a part of the mission.
For those who don't know, it's like a franchise.
Basically, yeah. VFW, American Legion, they've been doing it for decades. So we can do something similar. Now, the 2 properties here, I'm really excited about these. The shelter, we were approached by a nonprofit that closed its doors, and they already had a building with a commercial kitchen. And when nonprofits close, all of their assets have to either be liquidated and that money donated to another nonprofit, or they have to be given to other nonprofits. There's no owners of a nonprofit, so you can't retain ownership of any of the organization's stuff. So they came to us and they said, hey, we've got this building. Could you use it? Our team went and toured, and we realized that the way it's set up, we could put in 40 or 50 beds, and we could have a shelter that is veteran specific. It's already got a kitchen. It's already got bathrooms. It's got everything we need to do it. And it's twofold. Now it's a shelter that is veteran specific. We understand the struggles that might keep veterans going to other shelters, but it's also a little bit more permanent than a shelter would be. You know, some shelters have a rhythm where you're in by 5 p.m., they do dinner, they have night services, and then you're out the next morning by 8. So they can clean up, they can reset. But if you don't make it back to that shelter the next day by the cutoff, or they got 100 beds, you're number 101 in line, you got to find another resource for that night. This shelter we're going to set up where once we have those 50 veterans identified, they have that bed until we have another resource for them. They don't have to go back out onto the street. You know, they can go look for jobs. They can go hang out with friends.
Because otherwise you're not fixing anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you just put them back on the street,
Yep.
It's the relief side of it, which is still appreciated. It's still needed.
Yeah.
But the restorative side, and that's a really good way that you put it. I never thought about it until you put it that way. And I'm like, wow, you're like,
Makes sense,
that
right?
makes sense.
Yeah.
And they're both needed. They both need to operate in their own ways,
Yes.
and they both need to be provided, and they can't always be provided at the same time.
Yeah.
The logistics or whatever. But yeah, so if you guys can line them up to be able to go somewhere after they've been cared for, to really get them off their feet and not just be like, hey, here's a cot for the night, a hot meal, right?
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, if you make it in line in time.
Well, the other cool part of that is we already work really well with the city's other outreach shelters, you know, and so they now have an opportunity. If they've got 100 beds, they've got 102 people in line, and 3 of those are veterans. We can pick those veterans up. We can take those veterans in, and it frees up 3 beds for the non-veteran community. And so it assists on the general homelessness side of things too. So we're really excited about the shelter. We've got some logistics to figure out, but it's in motion. The apartment complex we've been working on for probably 2.5 years. So a lot of the struggles that veterans have when they do get into an apartment is you're not going to knock on every neighbor's door and say, hey, Joe just moved in next door. He's got post-traumatic stress. You're going to hear him screaming in the middle of the night. You're going to hear him yelling and kicking boxes in his house, and there's nothing that you need to do about it. Just assume he's okay. Well, I've lived in apartment complexes before. I've had people make loud noise in the middle of the night. I've had people that seem to be frightening. And so it puts a lot of pressure on the veteran and the apartment complex. And these managers don't always understand the ins and outs of the veteran community. And so when we house a veteran in an apartment, we try to offer support, case management, try to help as much as we can. But there's still some veterans that find themselves feeling just as alone and isolated and unsupported as they were when they were on the street. And it's simply because those around them just don't know how to care for them and lead them in the same way that the veteran community does. So this apartment complex, we partnered with a developer. It's 59 apartments that will be just for the veteran community. It's got 1 entrance and 1 exit. It's got a community garden in the middle. It's got offices for mental health services and VA services, some of those things. But any veteran that lives there, we are their first line of defense. We're, for all intents and purposes, the managers, the on-site team that is caring for them. And it's going to give us an opportunity to open 59 apartments for veterans that may struggle in a normal community apartment complex, and then give us a year, 2 years of them getting used to what community living looks like before they then go on to a different apartment complex somewhere. So that is a big deal. It's going to be really impactful. And I'm excited to share stories of that place too.
A business wants to get involved. Somebody wants to volunteer. I don't know. Somebody wants to donate. Like they don't know how to help, but they want to help. They want to be, what do you need?
Go to our website. It's heroeshope.net. We have contact form on there. If you see a way you want to volunteer, or you have, a unique gift, you say, hey, I think I'd like to use this to serve your veterans, reach out to us. We love getting people plugged in.
How could they volunteer? What would they do?
So we
clean a house, or
we have, when we open a new home, we have to furnish it, right? So we've got teams that are moving furnitures in. They're building furniture. When we move a veteran from transitional housing into their permanent apartment, 9 times out of 10, we're helping them with some furniture too. So we take in furniture donations, we store it somewhere, and then when a veteran moves in, I have a team that will go look and say, okay, this person needs this, this, and this. They'll go pull it from our storage. They'll deliver it to them. So there's always opportunities there. We have families, small groups, churches that like doing meals for our guys. When I say we meet all the needs, like we're paying the rent, we're keeping the lights on, we're putting food in the fridge. So anytime a church or family says, hey, we'd like to cook a meal on a Friday night for one of your homes.
Like done.
Yeah, I will say yes 100 times over, even if 3 families do that and we end up having leftovers for the weekend. We're always looking for mentors for the men and women we serve. When we move them out of our program, we don't want them to feel like they got forgotten about. We want them to have men and women they can text or call, reach out to, that are just people in their corner. So always looking for mentors and people that just want to support. And there's probably 100 other opportunities that I'm not thinking about right now, just because we got a lot going on.
We should list them out and put them on the website. Because I plan on making a volunteer page, and that's where it's like, or like a get involved page or something, or even just something to where it's like, okay, here's a list of all the different things. Pick one.
Yeah,
because like sometimes I think a lot of times like they're like, I want to help, but I don't know how.
Yeah, we do need a detailed
and I don't reach
list.
out, but if we can have like a detailed list somewhere for somebody to reference, and then also turn that into a PDF or something, and then have that as a flyer at events, or I don't know, whatever. It's like, if you're looking to help, here's 100 ideas. of ways that you can help.
That's smart. Well, I always encourage people to, like, I know that nobody likes to have giving conversations, like money conversations are difficult, but if you're looking for a place to be generous, Heroes Hope is always looking for people to partner with us. We are 100% self-funded. We don't get any federal or state funding. It's not because we don't qualify. There's been plenty of state and federal grants we could have applied for, but with the no red tape mindset, there's a lot of funding that we could have taken, but if we did, and a veteran didn't pass a certain screening by a certain date, we'd either have to give all that money back, or we'd have to make that veteran go back out on the street. And when we say yes to moving somebody in, they're family until they're back on their feet. And so we find ways to get public funding through grants, through individual giving, through businesses. And that's how we meet the needs of the men and women that we're serving. And we plan for opening new homes when the finances are coming in that we can open a new home. And for example, I think we just posted on Facebook, we have just under 3,000 followers on our Facebook page. $3,000 a month can keep a house open for about 7 guys if they're eating, each of them are eating 3 meals a day and keeping the AC running all day, right? So I challenged our Facebook followers. I said, if every single person that follows our page gave $1 a month, we could open up another house for 7 to 8 veterans. Like, that's how powerful of an impact individual generosity can really do in an organization like ours. So, yeah.
There's is there anything that you're like recently having conversations about or dealing with, and you're like, I really want people to know about this. I just wish people would realize what.
So right now, if I pulled up the known names of men and women who are veterans just in the state of Oklahoma who are living unhoused, it is over 500. I have 30 actively in my program today that I can go and talk to anytime. And if I took anybody listening to this to any one of our homes to meet any one of our veterans, it would crack any thought of who these men and women are or were before you met them. because I have yet to meet a veteran at a shelter or on the street who wakes up every morning and says, I can't wait to wake up here again tomorrow. Every single one of these men and women have goals, have desires, they have families. I've got veterans in my program right now that have kids that they haven't been able to talk to for years. But when I ask them to, paint a picture of their life in 5 years, they have some of the same goals and priorities and family hopes and dreams that you and I and everybody listening to this do. And so what I try to encourage people all the time is, you may not know what to say when you're at that red light and you see that panhandler, but when you know of programs like ours, call us, text us, because even if that person never knows that you're the one that called, the impact you have on that individual and their family and their kids is going to be life-changing. And there's not a number you could put on to qualify that impact, right? And it's simply because you made a call or shot out a text. So I try to encourage people, like, don't fill in the blanks, but see every single person as somebody with a unique story.
Love it. If do you this maybe your methodology or maybe an encouragement to somebody else? Are you more the style of just jump right in, get started, no planning, figure it out along the way, or would you recommend to be more prepared?
I think I'm right in the middle, to be honest with you. I'm very motivated. I will jump in to solve any problem. But I schedule time in my week every week to plan and problem solve too, because, jumping into a lake with no plan on how you're going to get to the other side doesn't get you to the
or
other
how
side.
deep it is, or if there's anything in the water.
Yeah, how far it is, how cold the water is, but if you know the distance and you know how many laps you can swim in an hour, and you can kind of plan out your pace, you set yourself up for success. And so, but I live in this tension. I never want to plan so much that I don't activate, and I never want to activate so quickly that I push aside planning. And so the reason I say I'm right in the middle is I will always look at a situation and say, okay, what can we do right now to remedy this? Quick risk analysis, like, hey, is there something better we could do? And then always have a follow-up on, okay, we did it this way. Did it work well? Could we have done it differently? If we find ourselves in that situation again, how could we plan through that? And I like doing it that way because you still show that the person in front of you, the mission in front of you matters enough that you're at least willing to jump in, but you're not so engaged and prideful that you're not willing to circle back and go, okay, how could I have done that better? That answer your question?
Yeah. So I agree with you. I don't think I lean more one direction over the other. You can put me into an environment and I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like you throw me out into the water. If I get tossed out of there, like I'll swim and I'll float and we'll figure out how to get back to shore.
Yep.
If I have the opportunity, and depending on the risk to reward, if I have the opportunity to plan, I will probably prefer to at least just get a general idea. And then if I need to actually have a full blown out plan, then I'll figure out like how many laps can I do, time it, pace it, make sure I eat ahead of time, and then eat afterwards and hydrate. And So the
mindset I just described is how we went from one house with 4 beds to one house with 8. Because I went and found a lease. I found a way to make it work. The board was like, yeah, we could totally do that.
Because you can't sit there and just plan all day. At some point, you got to execute.
And we do monthly board meetings on my team. And my board would be the first ones to say, like, no idea is a bad idea. And whenever we would face a problem in the house, it would be like, okay, this is how we fix it in the moment, but is there a different way we could do it? There was one meeting where somebody said, hey, we've got 4 guys in the house. The cost per veteran is this. They said, if we doubled up on beds, really the cost per veteran is way more fiscally responsible. Why not do it? And so we activated on it. We hadn't thought that was even a possibility until somebody, was processing through, looking at things and saying, hey, we could probably do better if we do it this way. And the team just said, great, that's a better idea. We're going to activate on it. And then we'll learn from there.
You have to be that kind of leader as well that's willing to hear out others. And you can't be the only one that comes up with the ideas and only likes your ideas.
I think you
have to also be willing to take out the trash.
Oh, yeah. If you're in a leadership role and you're not open to feedback, I would say you probably need to take a step back and grow a little bit, because as the leader, yes, we may be the final decision maker, but we're there to serve and to grow something that is healthy. And if we're not taking the time to hear from the people we're serving on what their needs are, or the way that we're leading is affecting them and their family or something like that. If I'm not willing to hear that and make adjustments, I'm never going to care for them in the way that they deserve to be cared for. I think feedback is more of a gift than it is criticism or punishment. And if I don't ever hear from my team of something that I'm doing well or could do better, then I'm not asking enough questions.
Are you lucky or are you smart?
Oh, gosh, hard. I think that I am smart enough to assess the environment around me. I don't think I am any more set up for success or lucky than anybody in my family, anybody on my team, anybody around. But I do think that I have the gift of saying, okay, well, this door is closed here. We still got to get out of this room. So how are we going to do it?
My answer on that is I'm smart enough to take advantage of the lucky opportunities.
That's good.
Or another variation of that would be I'm smart enough to put myself in opportunities to become lucky. I can't sit on the couch and all of a sudden try to win the lottery. I can't sit on my couch and then all of a sudden expect to bring in business.
Yeah,
like I've got to create the opportunities for me to become lucky.
I would say more than luck or smarts, I have tenacity. You got
to have grit too in your role.
Yeah. I was a recruiter. I can't tell you how many phones got hung up on me, how many people said no. But when you get 1,000 no's, the one yes feels so much better, And I tell people all the time when they're asking how Heroes Hope grew as fast as it did, it's like, I'm not scared to sit down and ask somebody or tell somebody what we need because I already don't have that thing. And if they say no, no harm, no foul.
I didn't move.
But if that one conversation turns into something, then we're already in a better position. And so the idea of using smarts towards luck is great. I think a lot of times it's tenacity and the willingness to just step in and say, I'll find a way.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the things that I've done kind of going back a couple of years as part of the Diary of a CEO, these cards. And the goal of the cards is to help empower human connection and have raw, unfiltered conversations. Kind of like what we've done to some degree today. Like I prepped a little bit just to have like some guidance and kind of, work us through conversations. Sure. But outside of that, like you and I have also had outside of this, some raw, unfiltered conversations. So,
plenty of conversations.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull this one out. And sometimes they're a little hard to navigate. So if this one's too rough, we can run through a different one.
So the question asks, what do you promise to do to make our world a better place? My promise is I'm going to do today for the one what I wish I could do for the many, with the hope that somewhere down the road I can do for the many what I did for the one. So I guess what I'm trying to say is my promise is I will leverage every day to find that next person to care for. But I'm not going to go to sleep if I haven't done it.
Have you thought about this? Have you read that card before?
I've never read the card, but that has been...
That's so prophetic. That answer that came to you so quick.
There's a pastor friend of mine. She will probably never know that she inspired that in me, but she said something to that nature one day when somebody asked her, like, what is one of your life goals? And I went back and I'm like, man, how many times have I had this big idea and I missed the opportunity to serve the littler ones right in front of me? And how many times has Heroes Hope taken one little step to serve one veteran that has turned into us serving 20 or 30 more? And so if I can wake up every day and I can say, hey, today I'm going to at least meet the needs of one person. Then in a year, I helped 365 people. In a lifetime, I helped thousands, but starting and saying, I'm going to serve thousands of people in my lifetime, it's a huge goal that can be overwhelming.
It's a good bit of encouragement.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
A lot of times we want to have the big, audacious, hairy goal or whatever that is, and a lot of times that can become daunting and you get stuck in the planning phase because you want to accomplish it. And you're like, okay, I'll never accomplish it. Like it's too big, whatever. And
nobody except the Marines that are listening to this will truly ever understand what I'm about to explain. But I remember my first real night in boot camp. Like you're 4 or 5 days in, you've already done all your paperwork, got set up. You finally meet your drill instructors on your first Friday. They call it Black Friday. You can YouTube what that, their promise they make, all those things. That night when the lights went out, about 20 minutes after lights out, I think me and the 99 other guys in that unit were all in tears together. Because in that moment, we're like, what did I do? It was a terrible decision. But really the reason that we're crying is 3 months didn't seem long before we went there, but 4 days in, 3 months sounds like it's never going to come. And that first night sitting there, just tears shaking, I remember hearing, I think it was the guy to my left say, God, just help me get through to breakfast. So the next morning, when I got done with breakfast, I said, man, if I can just make it to lunch, I'm good. When I got to lunch, if I can just make it to dinner, I'm good. And 3 months into boot camp, I looked back and I said, I made it every day because I just set these really small goals. And so although I do think the big, hairy, audacious goals are great because it keeps us motivated, we can't achieve huge goals without small goals and victories along the way. And of the 100 Marines I put in the Marine Corps, every single one of them, the day they left, I said, don't think about it as getting through the week, the month, or the entire time. Think about getting to the next meal.
It's kind of like in marriage too. You're like, I want to be, married to you forever, right? Tell your spouse. And, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, whatever. And you're in your 20s, you're in love and everything. And it's like, that's great. But keep that as like a big goal, but you also need to make sure that you have frequent dates. Have your goals as like, let's go on a date once a month.
Yeah.
Let's, we don't have to have all the babies at once, maybe. Right. Yeah. So I guess have some routines and habits to kind of build up like in relationships and at work and even try to have those short-term goals and from those habits.
Yeah. It's true in the financial world too. Yeah. If everybody wants to have enough retirement to not have to pay bills and to live happy, right? But if you don't start saving for retirement till you're in your 40s, then you're going to have drastically less in that account than if you started when you're in your 20s. That 18-year-old that starts with just $10 a month still has more in the end than the 50-year-old that started at $100 a month,
Yeah. Yeah. What was the card again?
What do you promise to do to make our world a better place?
I haven't quite thought about that like the way that you have. I've had some conversations recently. John and I have talked about how like some of the things that we're trying to do with Aid to Whiskey is try to just help out those who are less fortunate or those in need, men, women, veterans, kids, some things like that. And like we do a lot of those events for free. And it's just kind of like our way of like trying to figure out a way to give back that doesn't really take anything away from us outside of some time.
Yeah.
Like it's fun. It's great people, great connections. A lot of times we find out too that we use whiskey as a tool to connect people. It's no different than pizza.
Yeah.
So we've been able to make a lot of mutual connections with people to help exponentially expand whatever universe wireframes and webs that are happening from talking from one person to another and going, and matchmaking from some of those. It's like, oh, you both carry salt in your purse. Okay. You both are holistic kind of people. Okay. Like I've been doing that a lot lately, and I've been trying to just connect people with more relevant people.
Yeah.
And just helping, so as long as my bases are covered, bills are paid, like I'm usually like really helpful. I'm like, yeah, I'll do whatever,
I think a lot of people confuse career and calling and think that they're separate things sometimes. But I think, what I know about you, and I want to encourage you in this moment, like what you do through Sooner Marketing actually makes a difference for more people than you guys may ever see. I think about most of the wishes that come through the Soldier's Wish portal are coming through because they saw a Facebook post, saw a story of a veteran or service member's life being impacted. I got a donation from a family in Colorado. And when I called them and thanked them for the donation, asked how they heard, they said, we saw a random Facebook post that came through on our feed because it was on your feed, And so if it wasn't for Sooner Marketing, your team, the drive you have for how you serve, like the impact that we get to have on the veterans would be less because you're sharing the story and using your gifts to serve the people we serve while we're using our gifts. It's a community caring for a community. So
yeah,
I think it's probably not a great way to say that in a promise, but I think you are living out a calling in what you do for a career.
I've tried to shift.
I know you have.
I can't. I've literally tried. I've tried half of my career to shift. About half the time, about every 3 to 4 years, I'm like, I wonder, dip some toes in some water, Nothing. They get shot down. You know, I'm like, oh, let's go fly over here. Nope, shot down. You know, I'm like, you know, I'm just gonna go dig a hole. Shot down. How do you get? I'm already down. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I keep getting brought back to the exact same position I'm in. Not in a negative limelight,
Sure.
but just pulled right back to the middle. I'm like,
Because it's needed.
I guess. Yeah.
Because it's needed.
That's another reason why I like the doing the podcast stuff.
Yeah.
I get to expose other people's stories and history, successes and failures, and I kind of built this platform for whatever it's worth, and then help share that, you know. And so I don't know. That's part of a form of giving to people.
Yeah.
You know,
I always thought I was gonna teach college. You know, I have advanced degrees in theology and ministry, and I always had this dream that I was going to lead up and coming pastors to be better and to have the best theology and those things. And I tried doing that so many times and it never happened. And I realized where I serve people the best is when I'm with people, you know, and college students are going to go to college. There's going to be some professor there to teach them. I don't have to be that guy, you know, but if I wasn't doing what I was doing with the veterans, we're serving, be cared for. And it's really rooted in that verse of scripture. It says, you know, some people are a hand, some people are a foot, some people are an eyeball. And it wouldn't be fair for your eye to be like, man, I wish I was a hand, you know, because the hand can't serve the same purpose the eyeball does. And so sometimes I like to just take a step back and be like, man, where would Soldier's Wish be or Hero's Hope be if it wasn't for Braedon and Student Marketing? And even if you did move on to something in 4 years, Student Marketing would still exist.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it less true.
Yeah. Or any other partnership that you've had.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It
Where would Heroes Hope be if it wasn't for Soldier's Wish or vice versa?
Exactly.
You know? Like
no successful business or community was ever created or stood successful for time and time again without the power of the community. Nobody can do anything by themselves.
It takes a village. Any other final wrap-up thoughts? Someone wants to help. How do I contact you again?
Our website, heroeshope.net. You can email me, Sean at heroeshope.net. You know, I love connecting with people. Our phone number is on the website too. If you've got questions or you're out and about and you see somebody that looks like they're a veteran and they're homeless, you know, you can text or call that number. And if we can get to them, we can send somebody out that way. We will do everything we can to connect with them.
Awesome. Man, appreciate you. It's good whiskey, good talks.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And I'll see you down the hall.
Yeah.